So we just heard how the Supreme Lord Vishnu gave his personal audience to Kardama Muni, and then very affectionately he made three predictions before Kardama Muni with words as sweet as nectar. The first prediction that he made was that Swayambhuva Manu, who was the emperor of the universe, will be traveling with his wife Shatarupa along with his daughter, and exactly how Kardama Muni was contemplating upon getting a suitable wife. So they will um, give their daughter in marriage to Kardama Muni, and that daughter has just the kind of qualities that Kardama Muni was contemplating upon in his heart for all these long years. And the second prediction that he made, the Supreme Lord made, was that eventually Kardama Muni will take up austerities, and with that, his heart will be completely cleansed out by carrying out the instructions of the Supreme Lord. And finally, Kardama Muni will attain to the Supreme Lord. And in this way, he gave assurance to Kardama Muni that he will perceive his own self, and also he would be able to develop spiritual vision of the Lord and able to see the Supreme Lord everywhere. So this was the second benediction or prediction that the Supreme Lord had made. And the third one is that he revealed that he would himself manifest his own plenary portion through his wife Devahuti, along with 9 daughters. And in this way, by taking the form of Kapila Dev, he will instruct Devahuti, his mother, in the system of philosophy that deals with the ultimate principles or categories, and that's essentially the Sankhya philosophy. So in this way, the Supreme Lord had made these three predictions, and because the Supreme Lord was totally satisfied with Kardama Muni's austerities, out of affection, the Lord shed tears. It's referred to as the tears of delight. And the tears of delight had taken the form of Bindu Sarovar. And sure enough, pretty much on the very same day, Swayambhuva Manu arrived along with his wife and his daughter before sage Kardama in at the Bindu Sarovar. And it is described how the whole setup of Bindu Sarovar was. So Bindu Sarovar was flooded by the waters of the river Saraswati, and was not only auspicious, but the water of Bindu Sarovar was as sweet as nectar. And it is described in the verse number 39 that it is called Bindu Sarovar because the drops of tears had fallen there from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by extreme compassion for the sage who had sought his protection. And Prabhupada writes in that purport that Kardama underwent austerities to gain the causeless mercy of the Lord. And when the Lord arrived there, he was so compassionate that in pleasure he shed tears which became Bindu Sarovar. And that's why it's called the tear of delight. Bindu Sarovar is therefore worshipped by great sages and learned scholars because, according to the philosophy of the absolute truth, the Lord, and the tears from his eyes are non-different. Just as drops of perspiration which fell from the toe of the Lord became the sacred Ganges, so teardrops from the transcendental eyes of the Lord became Bindu Sarovar. And then the whole beauty surrounding Bindu Sarovar is described, how the shore of the lake was surrounded by clusters of pious trees and creepers, rich in fruits and flowers of all seasons, that afforded shelter to pious animals and birds, which uttered various cries. And it was also adorned by the beauty of the groves of forest trees. So notice the usage of the pious trees and creepers and pious animals and birds. So Prabhupada writes in the purport to 40 that it is stated that here that Bindu Sarovar was surrounded by pious trees and birds. As there are different classes of men in human society, some pious and virtuous and some impious and sinful, so also among trees and birds there are the pious and the impious. Trees which do not bear nice fruit or flowers are considered impious. And birds which are very nasty, such as crows, are considered impious. In the land surrounding Bindu Sarovar, there was not a single impious bird or tree. Every tree bore fruits and flowers, and every bird sang the glories of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we can imagine what we are surrounded by here in United States. And then further, there is description of the various species of animals that were um, living in the forest in the surrounding area, that its shores abounded with deer, boars, porcupines, gawayas, elephants, baboons, lions, monkeys, mongooses, and musk deer. So there is a mention of musk deer there, and Prabhupada is writing that musk deer are not found in every forest, but only in places like Bindu Sarovar. So then it is described how Swayambhuva Manu made his entry at the hermitage of sage Kardama, that entering that most sacred spot with his daughter and going near the sage, the first monarch, Swayambhuva Manu, saw the sage sitting in his hermitage, having just propitiated the sacred fire by pouring oblations into it. And here is an interesting statement. His body shone most brilliantly. Though he had engaged in austere penance for a long time, he was not emaciated, for the Lord had cast his affectionate sidelong glance upon him, and he had also heard the nectar flowing from the moon-like words of the Lord. So look at the purport here, the purport to verses 45 through 47. So Prabhupada is writing, generally yogis look very skinny because of their not being comfortably situated. But Kardama Muni was not emaciated, for he had seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Here the word Snigdha Apanga Avalokanat means that he was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Lord face to face. So this is a very interesting statement here, that he looked healthy because he had directly received the nectarian sound vibrations from the lotus lips of the personality of Godhead. Similarly, one who hears the transcendental sound vibration of the holy name of the Lord Hare Krishna also improves in health. I found that statement to be very interesting. So Hare Krishna Mahamantra not only cleanses our heart, but it also cleanses our body. And then there is a comparison that is made. The comparison of the sage to an unpolished gem is very appropriate. Even if a gem just taken from a mine looks unpolished, the luster of the gem cannot be stopped. Similarly, although Kardama was not properly dressed and his body was not properly cleansed, his overall appearance was gem-like. And then the monarch of the universe, Swayambhuva Manu, he bowed down before the sage, and the sage greeted him with benediction and received him with due honor. So this section actually brings out the symbiotic relationship between the Brahmana community and the Kshatriya community. So here the representative of Brahmana was sage Kardama and the representative of Kshatriya was Swayambhuva Manu. And they carry a very strong degree of mutual respect. And so Kardama Muni is extolling the qualities of Swayambhuva Manu by saying that you assume the part of the sun god, the moon god, Agni, the fire god, Indra, the lord of paradise, Vayu, the wind god, Yama, the god of punishment, Dharma, the god of piety, and Varuna, the god presiding over the waters. And then he says that all obeisances to you who are none other than Lord Vishnu. So, in other words, he identified Swayambhuva Manu as a representative of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the king deserved respectful obeisances from everyone. So there's a mutual offering of obeisances here. And then Kardama Muni glorified the king for the proper upkeep of the society, how he was keeping the upstarts under control. That if you did not mount your victorious jeweled chariot, whose mere presence threatens culprits, if you did not produce fierce sounds by the twanging of your bow, and if you did not roam about the world like the brilliant sun, leading a huge army whose trampling feet cause the globe of the earth to tremble, then all the moral laws governing the varnas and ashramas created by the Lord himself would be broken by the rogues and rascals. And Prabhupada gives a long purport here talking about um, the, the perfect social and spiritual orders that were established in the human society through the Varnashrama system, and how a civilized society is meant to follow the dharma of the Varnashrama system. And then after glorifying the king, then Kardama Muni essentially placed himself before the king in this way that in spite of all this, I ask you the purpose for which you have come here. Whatever it may be, we shall carry it out without reservation. So now here, Kardama Muni was completely aware because the Supreme Lord has already foretold the reason for Swayambhuva Manu's arrival there. And yet the king wanted to, Sage Kardama wanted to hear from the king. So Prabhupada is writing in the purport that Kardama Muni could understand that such a great king as Swayambhuva, although traveling to inspect the condition of his kingdom, must have had some special purpose to come to his hermitage. Thus he prepared himself to fulfill the king's desire. Formerly, it was customary that the sages used to go to the kings and the kings used to visit the sages in their hermitages. Each was glad to fulfill the other's purpose. This reciprocal relationship is called Bhakti Karya. So Kshatram means the royal order, and Dvijatvam means the Brahminical order. The two were meant for mutual interest. The royal order would give protection to the Brahmanas for the cultivation of spiritual advancement in society, and the Brahmanas would give their valuable instruction to the royal order on how the state and the citizens can gradually be elevated in spiritual perfection. So this is the symbiotic relationship between the Brahmana community and the Kshatriya community that is wonderfully painted in this section. And the next chapter is dedicated to the marriage of sage Kardama and Devahuti, and we'll see how the event unfolds. Thank you very much.